Hi, everybody. How's it going?
Good, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you. So tonight is free tutoring for the core subjects EC through 6. Um, so let me share my screen. Before we get started, I'd like to show you some data um, that I think is good to know. So if you just Google EPP passing rates, this is the data the state puts out by the educator preparation programs about how many people pass their tests. So we can see what the numbers look like. For core subjects EC through 6, the passing rates are pretty good. We want to look at the ones that are 901, 905, 902, etc. The 800 ones are the old tests that are not offered anymore. So you can see in 2022, social studies, which is what we're talking about today, the passing rate was 75%, which is pretty decent, but you can see it was higher for science, right? Higher for math, even higher for PE and language arts, right? So that's why I wanted to do social studies tonight because people tend to struggle with that. So 75% pass rate. So it's important to study. So you want to have a good course or a book that is closely aligned to the competencies. And the way to know if it's aligned is to just go to Google and type in Texas NES INC manual, right? This is the same website where you go to register for your test. Then click on prepare, scroll down and click on core subjects EC through 6, 391, and click on go. And then you can look at the overview and exam framework, and it has the competencies if you scroll down. So it's very vague, like it'll say, for example, for language arts. It'll say that you know the stages of acquisition of oral language, right? Including phonology, semantics, syntax, and pragmatics. But it doesn't tell you what those things are. So you have to figure that out yourself or buy a good study guide that will tell you, right? So that's what my course does, is tells you all of those terms that you need to know and concepts. But tonight we'll do social studies, right? And I've passed 15 of these Texas exams. I take a lot of them because I tutor for different exams. And on 14 out of 15 of them, I have seen real test questions on my real exam that were in the free manual, including when I took the core subjects. That happened to me. It might not happen to you because there's different versions of the test, but I highly recommend you look at the free questions in this manual, right? Because it'll help you get ready. It's not enough, but it's a good supplement. So let's look at my course. Today we're going to do a little bit of history. We don't have time to do the whole thing because I have some other tutoring tonight. So we're going to do a little bit of history. Um, and then like in my paid tutoring, that's a lot longer. I do it for a whole hour, but for free tutoring, I just have half an hour. So we just cover some of the concepts. But you can see tonight I thought we'd do history and it's really long. So it would take over an hour to go through all of this. But we'll do the main stuff, which is the Texas history, because I think you're going to see a lot of Texas history on the test and a lot of US history, not a lot of world history. Right. And that's kind of what sets me apart is I've taken the test. A lot of the other companies that make study material, they make material for all the states. And so their stuff is real broad and really specific to maybe what's going to be on all the tests. And mine is only for Texas, right? So it's going to save you time. So the Texas Revolution started in 1835 at the Battle of Gonzales. There are a few battles you have to know: the Battle of Gonzales, the Alamo, and the Battle of San Jacinto, right? So it started at the Battle of Gonzales, ended at the Battle of San Jacinto. So what happened was a tariff exemption expired in 1830, leading to increased tension between the colonists living in Texas and the Mexican government, right? Animosity increased after Mexican Congress passed a law for limiting or forbidding immigration from the US. So at first, we remember that they asked Stephen F. Austin to bring settlers from the US to what is now Texas. But after a while, they didn't want more settlers, right? So that caused some problems. And the Mexican government had given the town of Gonzales a cannon to defend themselves against the Native Americans. And they ordered that the town of Gonzales return it. And Gonzales refused and said, come and take it, right? That's where you'll see those bumper stickers or those t-shirts, right? So they were successful in keeping the cannon and forming an army with Stephen F. Austin as the first leader, but later Sam Houston took over as the major general. In the most famous battle, the Alamo, Santa Anna's Mexican forces outnumbered and defeated the Texans. Davy Crockett, William Travis, and James Bowie or Jim Bowie are the most famous heroes that died at the Alamo. And then the Republic of Texas, after the treaties of Alaska were signed, Texas was an independent nation until 1845. Texas had its own constitution and president. Sam Houston was the first official president, and he served 2 non-consecutive terms as president, right? Then the annexation of Texas by the US in 1845, while Polk was president, Texas joined the US as a state, right? This infuriated the Mexican government, and it was one of the factors leading to the Mexican-American War. Under President Polk, the US increased in size and power in the world. Many Americans believed in manifest destiny. I think you'll see that on the test. That was the belief that the US had the God-given right to expand its borders and its power. All right, so the manual will tell you to know about individuals, events, and issues that shape the history of Texas, the US, and the world. So then it's up to you to know what events and people they're talking about and issues. So I've done that for you in my course. So the first one we need to know is Stephen F. Austin, known as the father of Texas. He was born in Virginia and was what they call an empresario, or in Spanish, empresario. They were granted the right to settle land. In exchange, they recruited settlers and were responsible for them. So initially, he was reluctant to take the job as empresario in Texas, but he decided to help his father and continued even after his dad died unexpectedly. He developed a good relationship with Mexico at first and was even granted Mexican nationality, but Mexico began to suspect him of inciting a riot in Texas, and he was arrested and held prisoner. Later, he was released on bond, and he did help Texas fight for their independence. He did not die at the Alamo. Some people get that confused. He died of pneumonia shortly after Texas gained independence. Next, we have José Antonio Navarro, and he was an important leader in the Texas Revolution, born in San Antonio, had an early basic education, but later he studied, was a self-made man, became a lawyer and a legislator in Texas and Coahuila, one of only 3 Mexicans that signed the Texas Declaration of Independence. He was a friend of Stephen F. Austin. As a Texas congressman, he fought for the rights of Tejanos who were not treated fairly after the Texas Revolution because the Anglo settlers were suspicious of Tejanos and doubted their loyalty. After the revolution, he advocated for Texas to join the US as a state. So you'll see like a county named after him, streets named after him, things like that. Sam Houston, like Stephen F. Austin, Sam Houston was born in Virginia. He became a lawyer and then a congressman and senator in the state of Tennessee. He moved to Texas and became a commander of a local army in the conflict between the US settlers and the Mexican government. Later, under his leadership, Texas secured independence from Mexico at the Battle of San Jacinto. He was elected president of Texas twice. And then the Battle of the Alamo. In this important historic battle, the men defending the Alamo and fighting for Texas independence were greatly outnumbered, and after 13 days were defeated by the Mexican army. This loss emboldened the movement for Texas independence as they remembered the Alamo. Among those who died, because sometimes they ask this, so I mention it again, James Bowie, Davy Crockett, and William Travis. Yeah, I'll take questions at the very end. That's a good question. Battle of San Jacinto, that was the final battle, right? Where the Texans surprised the Mexican army and defeated them. And they cried, "Remember the Alamo." So now we have some US history, which you probably remember, but we'll brush up on this. Christopher Columbus, an early explorer from Italy. right? Spain paid for his voyage, but he was from Italy. In 1492, he, quote, discovered the New World. He was trying to find an alternate route to the islands near India and China, and he stumbled upon America. Right? His ships were the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. And then we have George Washington, the first president of the US. He led the Continental Army as the commander-in-chief during the Revolutionary War. He was he studied math and was a surveyor. He was married to Martha Dandridge. He was an excellent leader in the Revolutionary War. He gave a speech at the end of his term for Americans to keep high standards and limit their involvement in foreign affairs. His face is on the $1 bill and the quarter. And of course, we know many places are named after him. Alexander Graham Bell, the famous scientist who was born in Scotland and later moved to Canada and the US. He worked with deaf students, started a school for the deaf, and invented the telephone. His work on devices to help the deaf learn to speak gave him the idea to try to invent the telephone. Then we have Benjamin Franklin. Sometimes they ask questions like this on the test. Who was known for citizenship, or who was known for inventiveness? So I tell you that in my course. In the TEKS, he is listed as an example of a person showing citizenship. Right? Benjamin Franklin was a founding father, diplomat, politician, scientist, and inventor. He drafted the Declaration of Independence, invented bifocal glasses, published Poor Richard's Almanac, and set up our nation's first lending library. He is also famous for his kite and key electricity experiment, and shortly after that, he invented the lightning rod. He did own slaves at one point, but later realized it was evil, freed his slaves, and even petitioned Congress to end slavery. Francis Scott Key, he is listed as a person showing citizenship. He wrote the words to our national anthem, the Star-Spangled Banner. So he did not write the music, but he did write the lyrics, the words. And he did this while the British were bombarding Fort McHenry during the War of 1812. Right? Thomas Edison, a famous inventor that invented the phonograph, the telegraph, and the kinetograph, which was kind of like a movie picture. He's known for inventing the light bulb, but really Humphrey Davy invented the first electric arc lamp. And Edison invented the first electric light bulb that was commercially feasible. So he's given credit for that. Amelia Earhart, a famous aviator and author who was the first to fly solo from Hawaii to the US mainland. According to the TEKS, she is an important example of individualism and inventiveness. While she was attempting to circumnavigate the Earth, her plane disappeared. She is presumed to have died at that time. W.E.B. Du Bois, in the TEKS, he is an important example of individualism and inventiveness. He was an important Black activist who co-founded the NAACP. He was also the first African-American to earn a PhD from Harvard. So he promoted African-American rights. Robert Fulton, another example of individualism and inventiveness. He invented the first successful commercial steamboat and warship.
All right, so if you look at my page.
You guys could mute mics. George Washington Carver, another figure demonstrating individualism and inventiveness. He was an African-American botanist and inventor born into slavery, invented many products from sweet potatoes, peanuts, and soybeans. He's known for peanut butter, right? And he championed crop rotation and education about agriculture. Eleanor Roosevelt, she's known for good citizenship. She was a diplomat and wrote a newspaper column while her husband, FDR, was president. She spoke out against discrimination and racism and helped the poor. After her husband died, she served at the United Nations with a focus on women's issues and human rights. I don't think Garrett Morgan comes up, honestly, and I don't think Richard Allen does either. So I put them on there just in case, but I don't think that they come up. Next, we have the Liberty Bell. In 1751, the Pennsylvania Assembly ordered the Liberty Bell to commemorate the 50-year anniversary of the Charter of Privileges, Pennsylvania's first constitution, written by William Penn. It outlined religious freedom and offered more rights for Native Americans than many other places. Abolitionists fighting to end slavery adopted the Liberty Bell as their symbol. It has a crack in it and rang its last note in 1846. Next, we have the Statue of Liberty. We've all seen pictures of that. Maybe you've even been to it, a symbol of freedom and democracy in New York City. France gave the United States the statue as a demonstration of friendship. because we helped France in their revolution, right? And they helped us as well. We already talked about the quote, discovery of America, colonization. There were 3 reasons that people came to colonize the United States and the rest of the Americas. And it was God, gold, and glory. So for money, for religion, and to make a name for themselves, right? Relationship between European settlers and Native Americans, often tense, right? There was many battles, but there were also good examples like Squanto teaching the Pilgrims about farming in the New World, William Penn trying to protect the rights of Native Americans, Sacagawea helping interpret for the Lewis and Clark expedition. Next, we have the French and Indian War. Although it's called the French and Indian War, this really pitted the British against the French and the Indians. So it was the British against the French and Native Americans together. It was related to the 7 Years' War in Europe between Britain and France. In America, the French and Native Americans worked together against the British. Although they had early successes, the British ultimately won. This war was very expensive for Britain, and they passed this cost to the colonies in the form of taxes, which caused outrage and planted seeds for the Revolution. In 1763, in the Treaty of Paris, France lost Canada and had to give Louisiana to Spain, and Britain gained Spanish Florida, Upper Canada, and some other French lands. Although the Spanish were not involved in the French and Indian War, they were in other conflicts and participated in the treaty. This boosted the British maritime supremacy and gave more strength to the 13 American colonies, since their European rivals to the north and south were removed. All right. The Boston Tea Party, you probably remember that story. After the Tea Act of 1773, a group of Massachusetts colonists known as the Sons of Liberty, led by Samuel Adams, dressed up as Mohawk Indians and dumped the British tea into the Boston Harbor. Samuel Adams organized the Tea Party, and about 60 members of the Sons of Liberty joined him. The British were enraged, and then they enacted the Coercive or Intolerable Acts, right? Which was a series of acts. They closed the Boston Harbor until the British were reimbursed for the tea. Only food and firewood were allowed in the harbor. Also, a new governor, who was a British general, was appointed to govern Massachusetts. British officers were given more liberty in assigning soldiers to be housed in colonists' homes. Also, the acts excused British officers from criminal prosecution in America. The Patriots were enraged, right? And so they called another intercolonial convention. The settlement of Texas, we already talked about that with Stephen F. Austin coming. We already talked about the Alamo and San Jacinto. Anytime I repeat things, it's because they repeat it in the manual. So I repeat it to really reinforce it. And then we know Texas became a republic in 1836 under Sam Houston as president. Texas was annexed under Polk, but also it was right around the time of Polk and Tyler, depending on what exact day you count. Mexico allowed European settlers to come to Texas and settle the land at first, right? There was tension between Texas and Mexico, and then, of course, the war. Slavery. So we know in the southern states, they relied heavily on slave labor because of the agriculture, and the South seceded in large part because they wanted slavery to continue. And then we have women's rights. In 1920, the 19th Amendment allowed women the right to vote. However, the fight for equality had begun much earlier. In 1848, in Seneca Falls, New York, Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott invited a group of abolitionist activists who met to discuss women's rights. They declared that all men and women were created equal. However, their efforts were overshadowed by the Civil War once that began. So that got put on the back burner, and the focus was on abolition. Civil rights, we know that civil rights activists fought for years for equal rights. After marches, sit-ins, and many protests, finally the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed, outlined discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. The law also required equal access in employment and in public places, required desegregation of schools, and protected the right to vote. Even though the 15th Amendment granted African American males the right to vote, many states continued unfair treatment and voter discrimination through Jim Crow laws. And then I don't usually spend time on world history. I put it in my course just in case, but it doesn't really come up. So we covered a lot of history tonight. You can see there's still a lot more to this competency, but I want to take questions. Somebody asked how similar my questions are to the real test questions. I think they're very similar. I've taken the test, right? And I try to write them as close as I can, but so I can show you right here. If you get an answer wrong, it will tell you why it's wrong, right? So San Jacinto ended the war, the Battle of Gonzales started it. So it will explain that to you. So I think they're very similar. But I don't have any real test questions, and anybody that does that is breaking the affidavit that they sign when they take a test, right? So I never share any real questions from when I take the test, or if somebody emails me a question, which they shouldn't be doing, I never share those. But I try to make it very similar. Everything's based off the Texas competencies, so it is similar. Which of the following people was an African-American botanist and inventor who was born into slavery? We learned about him. George Washington Carver. You always look at all options. It wasn't Du Bois, Morgan, or Allen. Right, which of the following Native American groups from Texas did not live as nomads? So this would be in a different section that we didn't cover, but they do ask about the Native Americans. So you have to know the Native American tribes, the Texas history, the US history. Like I said, not so much world history. You do need to know the amendments, the government stuff, stuff like that, and economics. There's quite a bit to it. And also how to teach social studies, social science instruction, lots of history, geography and culture, economics, government, and citizenship. So it can be overwhelming to learn all of this stuff. And that's why I made my courses for busy. I made it really for busy moms in mind because I'm a busy mom, but it works for busy dads too, or busy anybody. But I made my courses with videos. For every competency has a video, because you do need to sit down and read the stuff and take the quizzes, but sometimes you're busy and you still need to study, right? So while you're cooking dinner, you can press play, or while you're doing a load of laundry, you can press play and listen and still be learning something. So you still need that dedicated study time, but this can help you supplement while you're doing other things. So I'm going to put the link for my courses in here. You can buy the whole bundle for all subjects if you need all subjects, or if you just need one subject, you can just purchase the individual subject. I'm a little bit more affordable than most of my competitors because what they do usually is they sell you all tests for $49.99 a month, right? But I think it's not really a good idea to study for more than one test in a 1 month period. I think it's good to pick one test at a time, because otherwise you might not pass any of your tests, right? You don't want to dilute your efforts. You want to focus on one, pass that, and then move on. So I just charge you for what you need, which ends up being a little bit cheaper. So instead of $49.99 a month, it's $39.99 a month. And it'll save you time because I only include the stuff that is likely to be on your test. Or like when I include world history, I put a little disclaimer in there. This probably won't be on your test. So it saves you time. The math, I explain it in a really simple, basic way, very easy to understand. And then the questions get a little bit harder, but I start out with the basics. Just heard from somebody that passed the math using my course that had tried numerous other programs and had failed it multiple times, and then was successful after using my course. So I really believe it explains it in a clear way, because she said she struggled with math her whole life, but it made sense after watching my videos. So yeah, just study hard, and I recommend only picking one program and sticking with it, even if it's not mine, because if you try to do 2 or 3 study guides or books or courses, you might not be able to finish any of them, and then you're not in good shape, right? So it's good to pick one that's really good, that's aligned to the competencies, and stick with that. If you've already finished one and you want to try mine, well, that's great, but you want to make sure you finish, or if you have one that you don't like, then switch to mine and finish mine, but you don't want to be doing 2 at the same time. It's kind of like you don't want to study for 2 tests at the same time. It's not as effective. So any other questions or comments or anything? No.
I can say your social studies version did help me raise my score. My area of weakness was geography and culture and economics, so I plan on revisiting those 2 areas.
Well, good. I'm glad it helped you raise it. I'm sorry it wasn't enough to pass just yet, but I bet it'll be.
It was almost I scored a 233, so I was almost there.
Oh man. Oh yeah, you were close. Somebody asked if I have private tutoring. I do. Let me get you the link for that. Right now I have real limited availability because I'm about to start offering tutoring for a school district, and they've got me pretty well booked. Um, but I'll put the link in the chat box. And you kind of have to scroll down because I tutor for lots of tests, but core subjects is down at the bottom. So you can click on that, or if you need tutoring for a different test. But right now it's like, it's pretty limited on when you can book me because it's mostly just Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon. Yeah, that's all I have right now. But that works for most people, a Saturday morning or afternoon. If none of those times work for you, you can email me and I can look at my calendar for that particular week and might be able to find a different day and time that could work for you. Oh, and I was accidentally putting it just for the person that asked. Let me put it for everybody too. So that's the link to book my private tutoring. And I always send the recording, that way you can watch the recording again. And I will be sending out this recording. It might be tomorrow, but I'll send out this recording as well to everybody who registered. But another thing that I do before I take a test is I think about what score I want to get. And I visualize it, and I might even put it like on my phone, like a 260, right? Or write it down where I see it. And it's not magic. It's not like you write something down and it just happens. But what I think it does is it works with your subconscious and helps you think more positive thoughts, and also makes you think about studying more, right? Which is ultimately what's going to make you pass is the more studying you do. But that can help. Like athletes, they visualize their victory before, right? So we can do the same thing. And it's a great thing that you guys are taking your tests because the job fairs start up this month and the hiring will continue all throughout the summer. So don't feel like you're missing the boat. Usually the people they hire right now are fully certified people that already finished everything. And then as the summer comes, then they start hiring people that are on a probationary certificate like you guys will be on, that haven't passed their test or that just passed their test but haven't done their teaching yet. You know, they don't have their standard certificate, but it's very possible to get a job without your standard certificate, just your probationary. But I hope you guys have a great night. Any other questions or comments?
No.
No? All right. Well, thanks so much. And if you know anybody else that needs my help, please send them my way. They can text me or email me. I'll put my number in the chat box. You can text me too if you have questions. And then I try to get back to people quickly, but I have a full-time job and this business and 3 kids. So I stay pretty busy, but I'll get back to you as soon as I can. All right. Well, thanks again.
Thank you.